The next topic of my discussion is the fatwa of companion, fatwa al-sahabi or qawl al-sahabi, the saying of the companion. I will be discussing the meaning and definition of sahabi and the role the fatwa of companions have played in the development of Sharia. Who is a companion? What is the textual authority for the fatwa of sahabi? The rulings of the position of the mazahib in that regard, and some discussion that has arisen in the works of the ulama, especially Ibn Qayyim al-Shawkani and Abu Zahra. Fatwa of companions. We know that the companions have a distinguished position simply because they were the direct witnesses of the teachings of the Prophet and also of the asbab al-nuzul, the occasion of revelation of the Quran. And therefore their fatwa and ijtihad is recognized as authoritative in the basis of judgment, especially when it is not disputed by other companions. Some ulama, especially Imam Malik, have gone so far as to say that it is the fatwa of the companion, their precedent becomes an integral part of the sunnah. We often hear the ruling or fatwa of Umar ibn al-Khattab and Sayyidina Ali, and they have become part of the Sharia. They have made distinctive contribution to the development of fiqh, and the question arises whether their fatwa or ijtihad is like the ijtihad of other mujtahidun, or does it command our higher authority. Generally speaking, that their position is unique. Sometimes even the Quran have confirmed the opinion and fatwa of companion. Like I have given example, Umar ibn al-Khattab's view on the treatment of the prisoners of war has been later approved by the Quran and upheld. Question arises as to who is a companion. Who is a companion? Generally speaking, the jumhur, the majority of ulama, define a companion as anyone who has seen the Prophet even for a moment while believing in him and died as a believer is a companion. Questions arise whether the person who has seen the Prophet should have been attained the age of majority, or whether a child can also qualify. The answer is that it does not have to be adult persons. Some companions lived only when the Prophet died. They were still minor people. Anas bin Malik, for example, was 8 years of age when the Prophet died. He is a companion. Whether eyewitness itself is a requirement to see the Prophet, whether you have to actually see him, this seems to be not a requirement either, because some Sahabi were blind. Ibn Maktoum was a blind, but he was still a Sahabi. How do we know that someone is a Sahabi? How do we know this? The first way of identifying the Sahabi is through continuous testimony or tawatur. We know, for example, that Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abu Bakr and Osman, they were companions, leading companions and caliphs. We have never seen them, but by continuous testimony or tawatur, we know that they were. That is the one way of identification of Sahabi. Secondly, a companion is known by the recognition and endorsement of a fellow companion. And it is even said that sometimes their own confirmation is also enough to identify them as a companion, because they are generally referred to by the ulama in even the Quran to be upright. When they say that concerning themselves, we accept it, although Imam Al-Ghazali and others have said that we do still. If someone claims to be a companion, we look at corroborative evidence to confirm that information before we pass judgment. The fatwa or companion, the fatwa of companion may be known to us by way of their formulation of a ruling of ijtihad or an opinion by way of fatwa they have given, or a judicial decision or judgment they have passed, or that others have reported from them. But it is a kind of, we say fatwa of companion in reference to something we know from them on which we do not have a clear textual authority. If they give a fatwa or opinion or something on which there is a clear text in the Quran and Sunnah, their fatwa would not be really of great significance. But it is with reference to something which is not self-evident in the other sources that the fatwa of companion becomes significant. Whether the fatwa of Sahabi commands obedience and is a source of authority in law in judgment in Islam, different answers have been given. Generally speaking, yes, it commands authority, especially when other companions have not disputed their opinion in fatwa. For example, with regard to the entitlement to inheritance of the grandmother, companions have passed a fatwa that, and others have accepted it, that it is 1/6 share of inheritance for the grandmother. And that, since it is not disputed, all have accepted it. It is a ruling of the Sharia. We generally know the companions have agreed among themselves that disagreement among them is accepted. And the ruling of fatwa of one companion, in other words, does not bind the other fellow companions, even if this is a very prominent companion, because they have agreed to disagree, and that we know about them. But their fatwa in judgment does carry authority on subsequent generations, on the successor, the tabi'un, and others. And in this regard, there are three opinions that we will be looking at. The first opinion is that yes, the fatwa in judgment of a companion is a proof of Sharia, absolutely, and we accept it, whether it goes, it is khilaf, contrary to the normal rules or to the rules of qiyas or not. We accept it. And this is because in the Quran we have references to the companions. Like in Surah 9, Ayah 100, the first and foremost among the muhajirun and the ansar, among the migrants and the helpers, and those who followed them in good deeds. God is pleased with them as they are pleased with Him. As-Sabiqun al-Awwaluna min al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar wal-Lazina taba'uhum bi-ihsan. Radiyallahu anhum wa radu anhu. Allah is pleased with them from the Muhajirun and the Ansar and those who followed them in good deeds. Therefore, following them and following their judgment and their leadership is something that we understand from the reading of this text. Also in the Quran, in Surah 3, Ayah 109, You are the best ummah. Kuntum khayru ummatin ukhrijat linnas. Raised for mankind. You promote good, you prevent evil, and you have faith in God. If you, in other words, fulfill these requirements, then you are the best among people. But the text, it is said that refers to them as plural, not as individuals. Does this therefore affect our judgment, our position? Generally, it is held that when we read in the Quran that those who follow them in good deeds, it also means that if you follow one particular companion and not necessarily the collectivity of them. So the fatwa of companion refers to a fatwa of their individual fatwa, because their collective fatwa becomes ijma or consensus, and their consensus, the consensus of the companions, is the most authoritative variety of ijma. But we are not talking about the consensus of the companion. It is the individual contribution in fatwa that, according to the first opinion, yes, we must follow it. And there is also there are references not only in the Quran but in the Sunnah, like my companions are like stars. Follow them, whoever you follow them will lead you to the right path. أصحابي كالنجوم فبأي اقتديتم اهتديتم. In another hadith, honor my companion. Akrimu ashabi, they are the best among you. But again, some scholars have said that the hadith here generally tells us that they gives them a dignified status, that we respect them, but whether it means that we follow their ijtihad and fatwa just because a companion has issued that ijtihad, or we accept the ijtihad on the merit of what it says. The first opinion does give them that special position, and that is also their individual fatwa. They are the carriers in many ways of the sunnah of the Prophet, and the praise that is given is not just a matter of some formality, but establishes a special position for the Quran and the Sunnah. In other words, provides authority, that their ruling commands authority. It must be honored. The second view is opposite that of the first. They say that the fatwa of companion is not a proof in its own right. This view is attributed to the Ash'arite, the Mu'tazila, one view of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Abu al-Hasan al-Karhi. In others, they say that it is the ijtihad, the merit of an opinion we are looking at, and not necessarily as to who has contributed it. When we read the guidelines in the Quran and Sunnah on the subject of ijtihad, فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ, take a lesson and consider, O people who have vision. Then we understand that it is ijtihad by its own merit that we consider to be credible and authoritative, and not necessarily who has given it. Al-Shawkani, the Zaydi alim, has actually said this very clearly, that companions were the carrier of the sunnah of the Prophet, full stop. We do not create rivals to the sunnah by giving them a special position apart from that function that they have, the role they have as carriers and transmitter of the sunnah. But again, this is disputed by Abu Zahra, 20th century alim, who said that no, when we say that their view is authoritative, it is exactly because they are in the service of the Sunnah. They have been recipients of the guidelines of the Prophet in the Quran, and that is why we give them a special authority. The third view is attributed to The third view on the authority or otherwise of the fatwa of companion is given by Imam Abu Hanifa, who says that the fatwa of companion commands authority if it is contrary to normal rules, if it's contrary to the ruling of qiyas, which would imply in such a case that they have considered it seriously in the qiyas, the ruling, the normal rule at issue has been proven to them, its weakness has been proven, and they have given something contrary to qiyas. If it is in conformity with the normal rules and the rules of Sharia, then their fatwa will be of little significance. The rules are already known to us. Others have said that it is only the fatwa of the rightly guided caliphs, the Khulafa Rashidun, that is given recognition and distinction. And there is a hadith, if it is authentic, you are to follow my sunnah in the sunnah of the rightly guided caliph. Alaykum bis sunnati wa sunnatu khulafa al-rashidin. Imam al-Shafi says that he follows the decisions in the fatwa of the companions when he finds no guidance in the Quran, in Sunnah, in Ijma. But he prefers the views of the first three caliphs over others, simply because after that political dissension and turmoil prevailed, and there were differences and so on. So for the view of the first three companions is authoritative. But if there is a dispute and disagreement among them, then we refer to the sources which they have themselves relied upon, and therefore we investigate as to the validity and merit of their opinion. Al-Shafi also says that if the fatwa of the companions is in agreement with the normal rules in qiyas, then it means that qiyas is more authoritative, is a stronger qiyas. Imam Abu Hanifa has recorded a view that I follow the fatwa of the companions and refer to them when there is no text and guidance in the Quran and Sunnah and Ijma. But I follow them and respect them, but I follow those which appeal to me. But if they do not appeal to me, I may formulate my own ijtihad. But generally speaking, it is the fatwa of companion is given preference to the ruling of qiyas, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal has recorded two views. The first view is the fatwa of companion when there is no other companions has disagreed with it. An example is acceptance of the testimony of a slave. Is it acceptable? Anas ibn Malik has given a fatwa in its support, and no one has disagreed with it. So therefore we say that the testimony of slaves is acceptable. The second eventuality is when the fatwa of companion is disputed by others, by the other fellow companions. What happens then? Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal's response is that all of them are valid, and we consider them as their contributions to the Sharia. And he gives examples. For example, with regard to the share in inheritance of the germane brother when there is a father's father present among the legal heirs. There are three views. One is attributed to the Caliph Abu Bakr, who considers the father to be equivalent to the father, and in which case he excludes the germane brother, the full brother, from inheritance. The second view is attributed to Zayd ibn Sabit, who has gone on record to say that the grandfather, father's father, is equal to germane brother here and takes 1/3, given the same share. The third view is Sayyidina Ali's view that yes, father's father is treated on the same footing as a full brother, and he takes 1/6 of the estate. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal records all these views and says that they are all authoritative, but of course it puts us in a difficult position if you say that. One of the prominent Hanbali scholars, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, has gone on record to distinguish 6 varieties of the fatwa of companion. In the first instance, it may be a fatwa over something that the companion has heard the Prophet himself, and it may be a part of the hadith, but it is not known to us, the hadith. We have known it as a view of the companions. He says that, for example, Abu Bakr was very close to the Prophet, his close lifetime friend, and he has only transmitted 100 hadiths from the Prophet. Obviously, he had heard and more from the Prophet, and maybe that what he has said is something, he has heard something from the Prophet. The second eventuality is that the Sahabi, when giving a fatwa, has actually heard it from another companion, but it is attributed to him. It was a view that was known to others as well as himself. And third, that it is his own understanding. The companion's fatwa, it is his own understanding in interpretation of the Quran or the ruling of the Sunnah, but we have received it as his own fatwa. And fourthly, that it may be a collective fatwa of the companions that he is referring to, but that has not reached us in that form. And 5, that it is based on his general knowledge. As a learned person, he has given a fatwa that's based on his general understanding of the Sharia in Islam. And lastly, it is possible that he has received something indirect, may not be necessarily authoritative if it is founded on doubtful grounds. We know that among the leading Imams, Imam Malik relied extensively on the fatwa of companions. In his book Al-Muwatta, which was the earliest book on hadith, he records about 1,700 hadiths. Nearly half of them are actually the fatwa of the companions, the saying and judgment of the companion. So he actually mixed the two in such a way that one is the extension of the other. Muhammad Abu Zahra, 20th century scholar, he says that by way of his conclusion, that when we look at the precedent and the rulings of the 4 mazhab, all the leading imams seem to be saying to us that the ruling, fatwa and judgment of the companion is authoritative and that commands respect. They have a special position, but none have actually said exactly that it is binding on all of us. And therefore it does command a higher authority from the ijtihad and fatwa of other mujtahidun, but it is of a persuasive influence and not necessarily a binding source of law in judgment. With that, I conclude my discussion of the fatwa of Sahabi.